It was the weekend of our annual company retreat, and this year, the destination was the infamous Redwood Manor in the heart of the mountains. The manor was not just a luxury resort but a historic site steeped in eerie folklore. Whispers of ghost sightings and chilling tales had earned it a reputation as one of the most haunted places in the region. Naturally, my coworkers and I were buzzing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Our group of 15 arrived just before dusk, the sunlight casting long shadows across the sprawling grounds. The manor loomed ahead, its Gothic architecture and towering spires giving it an imposing yet strangely alluring presence. Inside, the walls were adorned with aged portraits, their subjects staring down at us with lifelike intensity. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something elsey lingering musk that hinted at secrets long buried. That evening, our itinerary included the manor's renowned ghost tour, an experience touted as not for the faint of heart. At 8 p.m., we gathered in the grand lobby where our guide, an older man named Elias, awaited. Dressed in a tailored suit that seemed plucked from another century, Elias had a commanding presence. He greeted us with a wry smile and began recounting the manor's dark history. Redwood Manor has stood for over 150 years, he began, his voice deep and resonant. It's witnessed its share of joy, tragedy, and the inexplicable. Many who visit leave with more questions than answers. Tonight, we'll explore its most haunted corners. Keep your cameras ready. You never know what might show up. The tour began in the grand dining hall, a cavernous space with high ceilings and an antique chandelier that cast a dim glow. Elias pointed to a particular spot near the window. This is where Lady Eleanor was often seen, gazing out at the gardens. Legend has it she's still waiting for her husband to return from the war. Cameras often capture orbs of light here. Sure enough, as we snapped photos, several of us noticed faint, glowing orbs hovering in the air. A nervous energy rippled through the group, but it was only the beginning. Next, Elias led us to the manor's library, a sprawling room lined with bookshelves that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air felt colder here, and the faint smell of old paper was almost overpowering. This room is said to be home to a playful spirit, Elias explained. Books sometimes fall from the shelves on their own. Visitors have reported hearing whispers when the room is empty. As if on cue, a book tumbled to the floor. Everyone froze, a collective gasp escaping. Elias chuckled. Coincidence? Or perhaps the spirit is welcoming us. The tension grew as the tour continued. We descended into the basement, a space that once served as the servants' quarters. The narrow corridors and low ceilings gave it a claustrophobic feel. Elias stopped in front of a rusted iron door. This was the cold storage room, he said, his tone grave. And also where a tragic accident occurred. A young maid named Lila was trapped inside and froze to death. People claimed to hear her cries for help late at night. A few of us exchanged uneasy glances. One coworker, Jenna, pulled out her phone and began recording. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The group fell silent. Faintly, almost imperceptibly, there was a soft sound. A whimper? A cry? It was hard to tell, but it was enough to send shivers down my spine. As we left the basement, Elias paused and turned to the group. For our final stop, we'll visit the concert hall, the site of Redwood Manor's most famous ghost sighting. The concert hall was a beautiful yet unsettling space, with its grand piano sitting untouched in the center of the stage. The room's acoustics amplified every creak and shuffle, making it feel as though we weren't alone. Elias recounted the story of Charlotte, a young girl who had performed here decades ago. She was a piano prodigy, he said. But her life was cut tragically short in an accident backstage. Since then, visitors have reported seeing a little girl in a white dress, often near the piano. As Elias spoke, one of my co-workers, Mark, gasped. "Did you see that?" he whispered, pointing to the far corner of the room. We all turned, straining our eyes in the dim light. There, near the piano, was a faint figure. She was barely visible, her outline shimmering like a heat mirage. She wore a dress, and her head tilted as though she were listening. "Hello?" Mark called out, his voice trembling. The figure didn't move. Jenna raised her camera and snapped a photo. The flash illuminated the room for a brief second, and just like that, the figure was gone. The group stood in stunned silence, Jenna reviewed the photo on her camera, her hands shaking. "She's there," she said, turning the screen for us to see. Sure enough, the image captured a girl in a white dress standing by the piano, her face obscured but her presence undeniable. The tour concluded shortly after, but the experience left us rattled. Back in my room, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound felt amplified. I tried to sleep, but my dreams were restless, filled with haunting melodies and the faint image of Charlotte's figure. The next morning, over breakfast, the group shared their experiences. Everyone had felt something cold touch, a whisper, a fleeting shadow. But it was Jenna's photo that left the biggest impression. To this day, I can't explain what we saw that night at Redwood Manor. Skeptics might call it imagination or a trick of the light, but those of us who were there know better. The manor held something beyond our understanding, something that lingered long after we left. And though I've visited many places since, I've never felt anything quite like the chilling embrace of Redwood Manor.